All right, might as well get started. It's good to see you guys. So we're just small crowd, so that's actually good. We can be a little more informal, and I love getting interrupted with questions. So if anybody has any questions in the middle of it, just feel free to put your hand up. It's not like a sermon or something. Although sermons would be interesting like that, right? So, all right, I've got a little bit of sort of framing to give and some introduction. And then we have a activity we want to do. We decided this is a workshop, so we might as well try to do some work and get some free labor. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we're interested. My goal with this talk is to help any of you who are interested in this topic to think through how can you use the technology that we already have to actually make massive progress on some of the biggest problems that we try to solve typically with the church and with missions in general. Because I think hopefully you can see with Bible translation that the problem isn't always as insurmountable as you might think. And there's a lot of reasons for some of the obstacles that we have, and they're all generally very good reasons. But sometimes something like technology can be used to get leverage that really makes certain aspects of the problem just go away. So anyways, my name is Ryder Wishart, and then Daniel, my colleague over here, he's on the computer there. We are working with Every Tribe, Every Nation, primarily E10, and we're making software solutions for Bible translation. And Every Language, that's another organization that actually just got started, and that's actually coming out of YWAM, in fact, but it's broader than YWAM. And that's rapid translation into low-resource languages, primarily oral translation right now. And then there's a website there, frontierrnd.com. That's just our organization for back office purposes, basically, but you can find us there. So, okay, so let's go to the next one. Daniel, thank you. Okay, so just for some context, and by the way, you could probably get rid of the disk not ejected properly. It's a compulsive habit that I always click on those, and you haven't backed up in this many days. Okay. Anyways, so E10 has these all-access goals. So basically, Every Tribe, Every Nation, E10, this is not a kind of conventional entity, but it's an alliance of all of these Bible translation organizations. I'll have them on a slide a little bit later. But they have set these goals for 2033, where they said, okay, imagine if all of Bible translation was like a big square, and everything you needed to do was in that square. Well, that's a huge task. What if we instead draw a circle within that square and cover a whole bunch of it, but not everything, and admittedly not everything? Let's set those goals, let's be really specific about what they are, and let's get some measurement systems in place so we can know if we're actually making progress toward those goals, and that you can see the numbers up there about what exactly they're going for. There's a few other details you could read up on the e10.bible website. And this is great. This has been going on for probably, it's been well over a decade that the first thing they did was establish measurement processes, and then they decided to set some goals. And as they began doing that, they quickly learned, we're way, way, way off track. So we're not going to be there, not a chance. We're going to be 50 years behind or something at the current rate. And so, which I think was probably generous too, because this is a long-tail distribution kind of problem. Finishing Bible translations for languages where there's lots of speakers, that's not that hard, and it covers a lot of ground. As you start to get into the really low-resource languages, not only do you have the problem of actually translating more Bibles, but also starting new projects is really probably, I think it's like in business. If you're signing a new client, that's like 10 times more expensive than just renewing with an existing one, because you got to put all this time and effort into, establishing rapport, finding the right people, training everyone, getting everyone on the same page, setting expectations, creating the solution, delivering it, everything. And it's really, really complicated. And Bible translation is like that, but it can be even more complicated because of security concerns and all other kinds of stuff. Logistics are really a big impact. So I think, that's okay. So yeah, you can go on. So that's their goal. They realized they're way off. They said, hey, let's use technology. So they created what they called the E10 Innovation Lab to incubate promising technology solutions. So the problem, of course, is with technology, you've got a lot of what I said here are mythologies of technology. So what is technology, and how does it relate to us, and how does it relate to the work we have to do, and who we ought to be, and who we would like to be, and what we would like our world to be like, in God's purposes. And a lot of these are extremely pessimistic visions of technology, and I'm just putting AI up here, but technology in general, Daniel and I were just talking earlier about how people look back at the Industrial Revolution and they go, oh man, can you believe how bad, working conditions were? Oh, the children working in the factories, oh, the pollution, just the abuse, and it's like, okay, all of those things granted, look around you, yes, there were bad things, and actually we've removed a lot of those bad things. They pop up, again and again like a hydra, but we've removed a lot of those problems, and look at the world that's around us. And I always like to ask people, when you're at church, you'll have people come up and say, oh man, the world is just so bad. Everything's just getting so bad out there. And I don't know. I think Jesus must be coming back I think it was 2 weeks ago on Tuesday or something. He was supposed to come back. So, but a big part of that kind of prognostication is, well, everything is so bad right now. And I always just think, this is so incredibly short-sighted and so incredibly ungrateful. Because you can ask somebody, next time somebody comes up to you and they're saying, oh, the world's so bad, just ask them hey, out of curiosity, what historical period would you like to get surgery in? If you have to get surgery, which historical period would you like to go to get that surgery done? Would you like it to be in the Middle Ages? Or perhaps the Stone Age? Probably not. Probably the best time to get surgery is, in a few years. So I think it can be very, very short-sighted. It can be, it's demoralizing. And one of the problems of having, holding this kind of view is, first of all, it's not true to reality. It's not honest. It's not truthful. But also, it's paralyzing. It just stops you from actually doing anything because you're like, well, it's just so bad. What can, Lord of the Rings fans here? Theoden, what can man do against such reckless hate, And it's like, well, you better start doing something because it's not going to get better with you just standing there moaning about it. That Aragorn says something to that effect. But you can go on, Daniel. I want to take a different concept here and just talk you through this a little bit, and I'll tie it back in at the end a little more. But this is the Thomas Kuhn's paradigm shift model, where he says this is how science works. So you start with normal science, and normal science is just the status quo. Everybody knows that's how things work, and there's certain problems that can't be overcome given normal science. And then over time, you get this model drift. So after a while, little kind of inconsistencies start to pop up and start to pile up. And then after a while, people start to say, these are real problems. And it all builds up until you get to this model revolution where somebody says, what, I think we've been looking at this all wrong. We've got to, maybe what if we treated the center of mass as the center of the solar system? That would actually solve a lot of the epicycle, complications, let's say. And then what happens is at some point, and sometimes this is generational turnover, sometimes it's something else, like some kind of crisis that precipitates a paradigm shift, a paradigm change, and suddenly the new paradigm becomes normal science. And from then on, everybody knows, well, people used to think atoms were like these little balls that bump into each other, but now we know better. Now we know that they're actually little quarks, but now we know even better that they're just fundamentally popping in and out of existence all the time and whatever. And I'm sure, eventually people are going to look back and say, well, what in the world did they think? It's just kind of, they had no idea how things really work because there will be future paradigm shifts. And this is a really interesting model, but one of the sort of things I don't like about the model is that it's cyclical and you miss what's actually kind of happening here. So if you go to the next one, well, if you look at these things, look at some of these technological advances. So these are just a handful. You could mention a lot more. I'm kind of orienting this more towards Bible translation. But when you look at these major technological achievements, one thing you notice about this list is that it is not cyclical. It's sort of like it's just getting better and better and better and faster and faster and faster. And so go to the next one there. I really like this model. I honestly don't know if it was a real philosopher who came up with it or if real philosophers are just found on X, but the guy who made this model of base camps, I think has done a really great service to us in giving us kind of a way to think about, it's a whole new paradigm, shall we say, of thinking about paradigm shift. No, just kidding. So can you go to the next one there? So this is, I kind of want to just read some of this at length if you'll excuse the rudeness of doing such a thing as reading off slides. But he says, at every threshold, there are a bunch of people who set up a base camp where they discuss how to cross the threshold. Some of these people do go on to cross the threshold, but those people tend to then become incomprehensible to those who are still in base camp. One might say, well, not all thresholds, but he's saying in this model, thresholds that are easily crossed are not real thresholds. It's useful to just kind of point out, okay, we're going to talk about thresholds that are actually really difficult to cross. And he says, often the reason for this setting up of base camps is that the people before the threshold are operating with a set of beliefs or assumptions that are incompatible with life beyond the threshold. And then he talks about some applications of physical exercise and that sort of thing. But, and actually, maybe I'll just mention that quickly. He talks about swimming, and he says, if you have competitive swimmers, when they're like in elementary school or even, middle school or high school, they compete with each other, but they only get so good. And actually, in order to really get beyond that level, they have to actually usually have some kind of major change in their life circumstances. Like they get they go get a new coach, they move to a new city, they go to a new level, they maybe leave home and go to a special school where they're like focusing on this all the time. And he said there's some really interesting changes, like for instance, the parents are primarily the coaches, or like the parents are in charge of their progression in swimming when they're little. But once you get up to a certain level of competitiveness, the parents really, they might watch from behind the glass, but it's the coach that's really the one who is in control of how fast and how far this person is going to go. But then when you get to the really highest echelons, the coach is actually expendable. They go through coaches, different coaches. It's actually the swimmer themselves that's the one who is in charge of what level they're going to swim at. So anyways, the need there that he's pointing out is, well, sometimes you just have to have a complete change in the life circumstances, the beliefs, and the assumptions. Keep going there, Daniel. And then he says, to cross a threshold from one world to the next requires a reorientation, a reconceptualization, basically a rebirth. And it requires letting go of the past in a way that can feel like a kind of death. There are a bunch of tricky and messy things about the social and emotional realities of base camps. And, it could be a bit of a bubble at times. But then in the last one there, he says, the interesting, kind of sad, kind of beautiful thing is that the way of thinking that got a person to base camp in the first place was usually some kind of useful insight that got them past some previous threshold. So every cope is or was once load-bearing. So I think that's a really, really powerful point, because on my team, we applied this kind of a concept to Bible translation. We say, look, yes, Bible translate, we want to honor the work that's gone on. And we honor the sacrifice and the effort and the labor and just the amazing work that's been done. However, some of those thresholds that got crossed required, adopting some new set of beliefs or assumptions that really got them past some major obstacle. But those achievements might actually now, with, let's say, new technology like AI, they might actually hinder us from crossing the next threshold and actually getting beyond the level that we can currently do right now. And so right now we're at a bit of a plateau in terms of how fast we can go with Bible translation, how consistent we can be, the quality level. And that plateau is basically having a bunch of humans on a team all just doing a lot of translating and proofreading and writing it out by hand or typing it out by hand and doing the proofreading by hand and writing notes to each other and that kind of thing. That's really, it's like a bottleneck, right, on the process. And it doesn't matter how much you do, before or after the bottleneck, your total throughput is limited by that bottleneck. And so, and go on there, Daniel. So I want to just talk about then, well, okay, so what would it look like in Bible translation to have that kind of shift, or let's say crossing a threshold, leaving one base camp and coming to another one? Well, if you look, there was a study done in 2022 by the Sagamore Institute for these organizations, which we have good relationships with and we love and respect. And there wasn't any judgment implied in what the Sagamore Institute was saying, but they found on average it takes about $1 million and about 16 years to do a Bible translation. And keep in mind, that's the average. That means there are standard deviations above that too. There are below as well, which is fantastic. But there are projects that take 50 years. So, and potentially cost, well, whatever it costs by year for 50 years of translating. So, by contrast, the Every Language movement, which is working in Nepal and South Africa and Nigeria and Indonesia, a number of places, it's really starting to pick up steam largely through some things that YWAM has started doing. And YWAM is really interesting because they're decentralized. And so if you give them a new idea and they think it's a good idea, they're kind of like, okay, let's just go do it. You know, they don't have the same kind of base camp thing happening necessarily. Well, they do. Everybody does, really. But they're a lot quicker on the draw to say, okay, let's try something new. Let's try something different. And yeah, maybe it might, transgress a few taboos or sacred cows, but let's just try it and let's see what happens. Because they're saying, well, what's our goal here? Our goal is to get the word of God to people. And so their cost, and this is their kind of conservative estimate, is $15,000 in 18 months for a full Bible, and church planter training for the person who translated the Bible to then take digital versions of the Bible and bring it to their village and plant a church, because they've got not only the word, they've got materials that now are keyed to all of the different sections of their audio Bible, so they can say, hey, what does the Bible say about loving your wife? What does the Bible say about money? What does the Bible say about work? What does the Bible say about our church? And so on. So this is to me, this is a good example of the kind of change that you can only have. It wouldn't be fair, actually, to go to those other organizations and say, well, this group over here said they could do it for $15,000, so why is it costing you so much? Well, they're operating in completely different worlds. And as we saw in those previous those posts, because they're operating in a different world, it actually makes them, in some ways, incomprehensible in the old paradigm. So if the YWAM group comes and gave a presentation to a lot of these Bible translation organizations, they would probably say, I don't even know what you're talking about. How do you deal with this or that or the other thing? And they're like, well, we just don't. We don't. That hasn't been a problem or whatever. And they would just say, well, I can't even comprehend what you're saying. Or I have no idea. Or maybe, hey, that's great. I have no idea how we would ever apply that in our organization. That doesn't even it's not going to work. So. Now, it could work. I don't think you have to be fatalistic about it, but it requires, right, letting go of the past in a way that feels kind of like death. It feels kind of like, the old order has come to an end. But that's okay, because there's a new order waiting to be born from its ashes. But I think, again, AI presents a similar kind of opportunity for us. Because translating with AI, if you actually bring up that concept to many traditional Bible translators, they might be actually thrilled about it. If they're doing the work themselves, they're like, oh man, this is going to make me way faster, and this is going to give me more agency over the project, more control, and that kind of thing. But for a lot of people, they hear such an idea and they're like, that's just not going to work. That is not just not a great idea, it's wrong. And we can't even stand with that. We're opposed to that. We think it's evil. We think, AI is the Antichrist after all. So after all these years, we learned John was wrong in his epistle about who the Antichrist was. It's actually AI. So this is the key thing here is that we're actually looking at technology that already provides us everything we need to cross that threshold and say, let's just actually do it completely differently. So I have an illustration of that, which is earlier this year. Yeah, you can go on, Daniel. Yep. This is what we did. We actually did a whole bunch of these, but I created a completely new Mandarin Chinese Bible from Greek and Hebrew. I asked for it to be painfully literal. So the guy who read it said, yeah, it's literal to a fault. It's really way too literal. But I said, great. Well, if you don't like it, just ask for not as much of a literal one. And it just took a few hours, and it cost $12. So, and if somebody said, well, I found a verse in there that's not a very good quality translation. Well, I don't know about you guys, but have you ever, well, you guys have had discussions with people about Bible translations, and I can tell you, I've studied Greek and Hebrew and linguistics. The translations we have in English are all phenomenal. They're phenomenal. Yes, they have different translation philosophies, but they're incredible translations. They're really, really good quality. And people nevertheless like argue about them as if like this one's evil, this is the only good one, this whatever. It's pure rhetoric. But in this case, if you didn't like the one that I made, well, just make another one. It's like the cost of like a couple of cups of coffee, or maybe one really complicated cup of coffee, from hipsters or something. So because that's actually possible right now, I actually think this is an inflection point for us. We can actually do things differently than we did before. Now, there is a limitation here, which is that you can only do this if you've got data for that language. Why can I do that with Mandarin? It costs $12 because there's a lot of Mandarin data that's available to train these models or for the models to leverage. And you can do the same thing with English and French and German and Portuguese and Spanish and so on. But you can't necessarily do it for really low resource languages right now. At least you can't just ask for it and get it. Instead, you have to get a little more creative. So there's a data bottleneck there, but for us, that just means, hey, we've actually got a new bottleneck to focus on and say, how can we exploit that bottleneck effectively for God's kingdom? And so, our new bottlenecks are actually data and adoption. Data because the AI models need data for translating, and then adoption because people have to actually use it. If people aren't willing to use it, we're not going to move any faster. If you're saying, no, I can't get on board with doing that. I couldn't possibly. It's just too, whatever it is. It's not right. It's not the right way to do it. Well, yeah, we're not going to make any more progress than we've been making because we're staying at base camp and we're saying, oh man, are you going to try to make that summit there? It's like, yeah, well, I'd like to. I got some ideas about how to do it, but I think I'm just going to hang out in base camp for a little while longer. And again, there are social and emotional complexities there because if you're like, oh, I'm going to go on and cross the threshold, then people look at you like, well, who do you think you are to go cross the threshold? Well, you're judging me because I'm here at base camp and I haven't gone over there yet. But what do you? And of course, once you're gone across the threshold, they can't even ask you how you did it. It's like they don't understand what you're saying anymore. Pardon me. You can go on, Daniel. Okay, so just as two examples for us concretely, we're working on two apps right now that are the Codex one, the desktop one, is being used really effectively, especially for things like translating subtitles and that sort of thing. So it's being used. It's kind of it's for multimodal translation, but the idea there is how can we take the AI that we've already got and just allow people to translate faster and better, more consistently. That is. Better is a subjective judgment, but you can be more consistent. That's something you can measure, and you can do it faster, and it's cheaper than actually having to do a really long process. And then the other one we're working on is a mobile app, and this is to help relieve that data bottleneck, because if we can get a mobile app out to these places where you actually can't even really bring a laptop because it's too hot or it's too wet, and there's just a lot of complexities out there, you can bring a mobile phone. And then you can start recording on this mobile phone. And then the requirements we have are it has to be really reliable. It has to be like, if you don't get an internet connection, it's still all on your device. You don't have to worry about it. You can see it all there. The data's just sitting there. Now, of course, if you drop your device in the river, it's going to cause some issues. But it's as reliable as we can make it. And then it has to be really tolerant to going offline. So it has to be, has to work for scenarios where somebody goes off into the jungle for 3 months, and while they were gone, somebody deleted their project and made a new one, named something else, and that kind of thing. Well, when they get back out of the jungle, we don't want to lose that data. They don't want to lose that data. They've been working really hard to gather that data. So we want to capture that data. We want to give people the ability to record and capture data, to translate data, and to validate the translations on data. So that's what that app does, and it's like a very simple app, but it's really, really difficult to make a really simple app. So it's been quite an adventure. And they're both open source apps. They're free. So anybody else, if somebody doesn't like the way we did it, well, just make your own copy of it. Put your own logo on it and go to town. Do it right. We would be thrilled about that. Okay, you can go on there, Daniel. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of an activity, though, because Bible translation is actually, I think informing you about Bible translation is interesting, but Bible translation isn't where this concept ends, where we can say, okay, only in Bible translation do we need and can we adopt a different paradigm, or can we cross some thresholds that we weren't able to cross before? I think actually there's a lot of issues that encompass, the entire scope of Christian missions, and some of those are things that you guys are really passionate about, like emergency shelters, for instance, and some of those things actually maybe what we want you to kind of think through as we're doing this activity that's coming up is whether some of the technology that already exists, and especially the AI technology that can help you prototype and prove some of those concepts and communicate that with people, whether those things can actually help provide some solutions that maybe nobody ever thought were possible, or maybe and of course they're not going to be complete solutions that cover every scenario, but again, drawing kind of a small circle within the bigger box of, okay, this is a huge problem. Here's some concrete way that we could use the technology we already have to actually make a difference right now. And we can do it, especially with the promises that technology brings. That is, I don't have to, if I want to distribute digital Bibles, I don't have to carry them all. In fact, I can have unlimited digital Bibles, and I just have to send them to people. So I'm not limited by how big my backpack is, or whether I can fit them in the trunk of my car, or anything like that. So, all right, any questions or discussion points or comments? Yeah.
Is your main data collection just sending out missionaries or data collectors to like these different languages and low resource people and say, speak? Like
Yeah.
how do you go about data collection with
Yeah.
low resource languages?
Yeah, so the question's about how, for the sake of the recording, the question is about how do we actually go about doing data collection? Do we just send people out and ask for people to speak into the mic? Yeah, so there's a few different ways. One of the things that is critical with data collection is getting boots on the ground. But let's say we're busy building the software. If we go out and we're busy collecting data in the Amazon, well, we're not collecting data then in West Africa. We're not collecting data in anywhere else. And also, we're not working on the app, so all the bugs that will come up, well, nobody's going to fix them. So we need to partner with people who are actually going out to different places. And they might be there for Bible translation, but they might be there for any reason, really. And generally, when you get out somewhere, if they don't have a lot of material in their language, they probably want it. They probably want not only Bibles, but Bible study material and theological content, or just training material, or even things like critical medical information, or how how can I help my plants grow more effectively, or how do I fix whatever. How do I help my animals be healthy, or whatever the issues are. So they're going to want data. And so our hope is that we can actually make this app to be simple enough that someone can go out and capture data on anything, and then that data can be turned around and used for training AI models that can speak those languages. Ideally, actually, we are actually open sourcing all the data, so it's public domain data. If you use the app, you're saying, I'm dedicating this data to the public domain, which is critical, because then there's lots of anybody can use it for anything. There's a few examples of this that are out there, like LibriVox is for audiobooks, for instance. But this is critical because then a group like Meta can come along and train a model on it, and then maybe a year later, suddenly WhatsApp can speak that language. And so someone can talk to an AI bot and ask them whatever questions they have, or point at the rash on their child's leg, and actually get answers in language that they can understand. So we're just really excited about this, but yeah, we need people to go out there. In the app, we don't dictate a particular structure for the data. One of the things you can do is translate Bible content. You can go verse by verse. You can go story by story if you want. But also, you can just capture unstructured data. You can go out and say, why don't you tell me stories in your language? And then we could back translate that into another language, and now we've got samples not only of, well, how would you say these things from another culture, but actually, how does your culture talk about these things? How do you talk about things that are important to you? And we can learn that language, and the AI can learn to speak that language. So, with YWAM in particular, they send lots of people out all over the place. They have like 30,000 volunteers every year. So the goal is actually to mobilize more and more volunteers. And then also just people who are doing missions already. They're already in those contexts. Maybe they even speak the languages themselves. So I don't know if that answers it all, but yeah.
So what particular challenges are there, whether it's an oral-based language or a written-based language, in terms of what you're doing, use of AI? How does that factor
Yeah, so using AI for brand new languages is, I want to say it's tricky, but it's not actually that tricky. It's just that you have to think differently about it. And the way that people have tended to think about machine learning or AI and language translation is I train a model where I take a sentence, I put it in one language, and it comes out in another language. And to do that, you have to, there's a lot of technical, tricky things that are involved in, okay, how do we represent this new language in text, in audio? How do we tokenize it? How do we identify what the words are? How do we identify some of the patterns in the language? How do we do that in a way that then maps onto these other languages? Well, there's a lot of steps there.
What's the difference between purely oral language versus a written language?
Oh, okay, so just different modalities. What's the difference between oral and written?
Like my understanding group, they are creating a text base based on Tibetan characters, you know, but it's historically been just a purely oral language, not written at all.
Yeah, so if you have a purely oral language, you can actually still use AI for that language. There's two different ways to do it. But the key thing is you always have to think about, in terms of data gathering that informs the AI, you have to think about, what do I want? I have to get some examples of things like that. And what am I starting from? I have to pair up my examples with the things that I'm starting from. So again, if it's a text-to-text translation, you're like, okay, I've got some English text or some Greek text, and I'm going to pair up the verses with, I've translated 10 of them. Great, I've got 10 samples now of going from Greek to my new language. But if you've only got audio, well, now you've got to do an additional step. You've got to say, okay, I've got, say, an audio English Bible, and I'm going to map that to English text. And then I'm going to predict text that would theoretically represent what my new language would say, and then I will turn that back into audio. So you have to have an additional step in between. Now, to do that, though, you have to have, each of those transition points has to have data. You have to have examples. We've got I don't have the app loaded up on there, but
Garbage in, garbage out, and you've got to have a lot more data, better outcome, better get results.
yeah, that's right. He's saying garbage in, garbage out. You have to have more data, better data, and that's exactly right. That's why we had to make an app where it's easy to capture data, and you can validate the data. And there's different ways to validate it, but you know, why can you point your phone at something and it knows what it is? I mean, that used to be, there was an old comic about that where it was like, from XKCD, it was somebody saying, there's a product manager standing over the developer saying, oh, this is great, we've got an app for our national parks. Can you make it so that the app tells you when you're in a national park? And the person's like, oh, easy, I just take a geotag, find out where you are, geolocate you, that's no problem. And the guy's like, oh, and can it tell you when you're taking a picture of a bird? And the guy was like, oh, I'm going to need a research team in 4 years. And ironically, 4 years after that, yeah, now you can actually point your phone at something and it tells you, what are you pointing it at? Like, am I pointing it at this kind of bird or at a red currant bush or whatever? The reason that works is one of the reasons it works is because there's been a lot of data validation and aligning data, let's say image data with text, but also, when you go to a website and you see a CAPTCHA and it's like, click on all the bicycles. And then it feels like it's testing you, but actually you're also providing feedback data to the model. So it might give you a bunch of things that it knows about, and it might give you a few mixed in there that it's not sure about. And so it wants your input. And if you can get the other ones good, like if you can get the 3 that it knows and you get them all correct, then it's going to trust your response with the other 2. So you can do that kind of thing in an app as well, and it's really powerful, yeah.
There must be a way where it's a refinement process where the bad data does get whatever ingested, fed in, and you don't want that bad data tainting results forever. So there must be some way of
Yeah.
Okay, that was crap or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, you want to be able to remove the bad data and not have it pollute your results forever, perpetually. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons in Codex, the way we designed the app to leverage AI is not to train models, not to have a long feedback loop, but instead the model, whatever AI is looking at your project and trying to help you predict what's next, is always looking at the most up-to-date state of your project, and it's always looking at what has a person already touched. And actually, Daniel made up this analogy that I thought was very good, which is kind of like the health of a translation. And the health of the translation flows from humans who are experts on it. They know the language. Nobody else knows the language except the humans. And so, for now, no. So the health flows from, okay, a human touched this translation. It's good health. And so if the AI is making a translation and it's based off of a human validated translation, then there's a corresponding level of health in the AI translation. Maybe not 100%, but let's say it's 80%. And then let's say that gets diluted a few more steps. Well, now you've got kind of low health. But if a human comes along and says, oh, that's a good translation, great, that boosts the health of that translation and everything else that follows it. So we want to be able to have instant feedback in our apps from whatever you have done or are doing to validate the translation data or to create more of it. The AI always has to have that at its fingertips instead of saying, oh, you need to do a few more chapters and then we'll retrain a model for you. And I don't want to be pejorative of that approach. It's just that I think that is an important issue for sure. Yeah. You got to be dependent on honest people. Absolutely. And this is why, again, YWAM, they're volunteers. They're volunteers, and it actually makes a big difference because if you're passionate about it, you're probably not going to just put a bunch of garbage in there just to say, well, I translated a whole bunch, it's fine. Yeah, so here, Charlie, I want to then.
I was going to ask, so if I'm volunteering and I go out there with my phone into an area and I'm helping record, because sometimes there's multiple languages around in a community, right? In an area. Is the AI able to kind of hear it and go, yeah, this maps onto this language, not that language? Or are we at a place where it's able to do that?
No, actually, this is interesting. Anybody who is feeling slightly adventurous, just listen up. No, there is no person on earth that can tell you all of the languages on earth. Doesn't that seem crazy? It's like you could, like currently, I think we could get there. I would like to get there. It's like a frontier. You know, like, yeah, we're like sending rockets to Mars and all that, but like nobody actually knows what are all the languages on this planet. That's wild. And even what, counts as official languages, I know in Nepal, for instance, one of my friends who's there, he said, well, the guys who were surveying, no fault to them, they had limited resources, they came in, they got up to a certain elevation, and they said, okay, on this plateau, we know there's about 5 different kind of related languages, so let's just call that Central Sherpa. And we'll come up with something that's kind of a compromise that doesn't actually match any of the languages, but it's just a code, and we're just going to use that code to represent all of that variation. And the thing is, those languages change very quickly. But if I've heard some different estimates, but there is a guy who wrote a computer program that can map any script on the planet to Roman characters, and so he has a pretty good sense of this. But he said, yeah, there's probably more like there's got to be 30 or 40,000 languages at least. If you're counting languages where we're going to need our own Bible. Now, the official number is 7,600 and whatever. But actually, there are many, many, many languages. Faith Comes by Hearing is already up to over 20,000 on their list, and it's just growing. So, anyways, okay.
Yeah, I was going to ask the 2 tools you talked about. I took a picture because I can't write that fast.
Oh, sure.
Codex and LangQuest or whatever. So are they tools to learn, understand, and create, I don't know if that's the right word, the data for unknown languages? Do they create a grammar and a vocabulary and all that stuff? Or like, what?
Yeah, so you're asking, do the tools we made create a grammar and a vocabulary, and do they do everything you need to basically uncover or document a language? Now, this is actually, this could be an example of, do we need to do those things right now? Do we need to create a grammar before we can translate it? One argument to say, no, we don't actually need to do that first, is that if you go out to really rural churches where there are multilingual congregations with low resource languages, if you go on a Sunday, the pastor will probably stand up and either the pastor or somebody else will start reading from the Bible, and somebody else will be translating it on the fly. into another language. Now, that is basically one of the observations that spurred the process that YWAM uses, which is you find bilingual people who are believers. They want to translate. They want to see the Word of God transform their community. They give up about a year or year and a half of their time to come sit down and just translate, and just to do that over and over again every day, to sit down with somebody, and either they can read it themselves, or right now the process is they have multiple people in the room. They'll have basically checks and balances for making sure, and one of the things that's going to happen inevitably is I misspeak, right? It's like, oh, I said Peter said to Jesus, but I meant the other way around. So again, that's another thing. You have to be able to quickly edit your content and say, oops, I just misspoke, delete that little clip, and then add another one in there. But yeah, this is one of the questions is, how can we eliminate complexity up front? We can always add those observations later, and we can iterate on these Bibles. They don't have to be the final Bible to ever, become a reality in this culture. One of the mentalities that's a mentality that has developed around the kind of expensive and long process that we have. Well, if it costs that much money and it takes 16 years to do it, well, of course, it's going to be a long time before we do another one, so we better get this right. Well, actually, ironically, it's a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And instead, if you're like, hey, I just did a chapter and I hit publish and it's up and it's in the distribution app, and people in my church were all listening to it together, and actually somebody pointed out, I don't think that's how the story goes. And I went and looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, I totally mixed up this thing. And so I fixed it and I hit publish, and you know what? Everybody's got the corrected version like the next day. That's kind of it's a different mindset, it's a different process. So yeah.
I think I didn't ask my question well.
Oh, sure.
Because you sort of kind of answered a different question, which is okay. But I guess let me ask it a different way. What specifically do Codex and what LangQuest do?
Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, for one, you could download them right now. LangQuest is on Android. It's held up in the iOS store, so if you have an iPhone, sorry, it'll be a little bit. But LangQuest is more in development. Codex it's a tool for transforming samples of language, whether they're text or audio. And actually, you can have images in there too, but we don't do anything with them. You just look at them. So basically, you'll have your source, imagine your source text or audio clips on the one side and your target on the other. And you could just manually start translating them. Say, okay, I can see that one, I'll translate it over here. But what you can do is hit a sparkle button, and it will say, okay, what have you been doing in this project? How do you translate in this project? What counts as quality in your project? What kind of style are you going for? You can give the AI extra instructions as well, but then it will predict more of the same of what you've been doing. And so when there's audio, even if we just load an audio clip in a low resource language, when you click the sparkle button, the first thing it does is it tries to transcribe the audio using a machine translation or a machine transcription, pardon me, and it's probably not going to be good quality at all. But then the AI will do a second step and say, okay, but given how you are transcribing in your project, how should I clean up what the machine is giving me? Because the machine is giving you something predictable, it's consistent, and so you're showing it now, how do you consistently or predictably transform that so it's a good transcription? And it actually represents the language I'm trying to transcribe. And if you keep clicking that sparkle button, it'll do more and more and more and more, and you can go through and validate each one. And the idea is not to do a whole ton all at once, but it's instead, because that's kind of like getting in your airplane, setting it in a certain direction, and then just saying, okay, I'm going to let it go for 1,000 miles and see how far off I am. It's like, no, instead, just every mile, if you adjust it, do micro adjustments, you're going to get exactly where you want to go in the end. So in the same way, if you steer the AI and every step you correct it, whether you're transcribing, whether you're translating, whether you're just transforming it, you could even be annotating it. You could say, here's a Bible verse. I'm going to write some notes about it. And then when you hit the sparkle button, it'll be like, here's some more notes that you probably would write given what you've been writing. And you can change them and adjust them as you want. So does that help a little bit? We can absolutely show you later too, but and you could probably download and play with it. Although we've tried to throttle how easy it is for people to get started on it for now, because there's too many people using it for us to keep up with until we make it a little bit more. We stabilize some of those features. So yeah. Okay, what time do we have here?
3:17.
Oh, so we only got a few minutes. All right, that's fine. So we've actually got a demo for you. of that's actually participation. So if you have your phone, you should get your phone out. And then, I should have put the URL. Can you add the URL to the slide, Daniel? If you can. Oh, there it is. Okay. BaylorAIWorkshop.com. BaylorAIWorkshop.com. Quiplash. Anybody played Quiplash?
This is that, but for Bible translation. So, basically, get on your phone, go to BaylorAIWorkshop.com, scan the QR code. And then just put in your name, and then this will be like, it'll take us through basically data gathering for a language, which we'll just do. And then we'll see how AI can learn from our answers and translate it. So,
You want me to narrate the process? Sure. Yeah, so we're all going to join this this workspace together here. This is not Codex or LangQuest, ironically.
yeah, I made this yesterday, so if it doesn't work,
But this is one of those. It's a meta example where Daniel is showing you that actually, in one day, he can make something that's better than all of the crowdsourcing Bible translation tools that have ever been made. Not only because he's a genius, but actually because AI is so good at making tools and prototypes now. Especially if it's analogous to something that exists. So in this case, he said, I want it to work like the game Quiplash. And because it was already something that was known, the AI can do a really excellent job of it. So, okay. Is most people in here? No Wi-Fi? You guys, it's the FBC guest thing, and the password is, yeah, it says waiting. That's fine. It's not. He hasn't started yet. So that's like a dashboard, and then we'll see our own individual. It's John 3:16, capital J with a colon. John with a J, capital J, 3:16. Yep. Open image in new tab. There you go. There we go. So what we're going to do in this example, as you guys get in there, is we're going to create a Gen Z Bible translation. And the way we're going to do that is you will be shown a verse, and it will be your job to change the translation to make it more Gen Z compatible. This will be easier for some of you than for others. But if you need some tips, let me tell you, Gen Z uses a lot of skull emojis, or they'll say "rip" as in rest in peace, and this doesn't mean what you might think it would mean, but at the same time, it might be what you think. So, just if you're kind of lost, just add fire emojis and skulls, and both are. Yeah, skull and crossbones. Well, is there a skull? Oh, I guess on Android maybe. Yeah, absolutely. Tombstone can also be effective. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create some translations, and then we will go into a voting phase, and we will upvote the ones that are really good, and then we will go into a final phase where the AI will look at what we've done and start making more of them, and we can accept or reject them depending on whether it's doing a good job. And the critical illustration here is we're not training a model. This is not costing a lot of money or something. This is just taking the tools that are already there and just framing the problem properly and giving the AI examples of what we need to do, and it's going to make more of it. So,
yeah.
let me see.
I think we're gonna press start.
All right, so you have a minute to transform. You probably see one on your screen now.
Now just edit it, make it more Gen Z, so make it worse than it is.
I'm going to quote you on that definition of Gen Z.
So it has the verse twice, it has a
Yep.
field that's, I got deleted.
The second one.
Edit out everything in the second one, then do
Or
my.
just change a few words.
Oh, okay.
It's just there to make it easier to not retype the whole thing. And I'll click pause here so we have a little bit more time.
Okay, and then when you hit submit, you should see waiting.
Yeah.
And once you're done, I'll just wait till you're looking up, and then I'll assume you're done.
Once everyone has agreed that.
Oh, agree. Oh, even. Oh, wow. Wow. The app handles that, actually. Never mind. Don, Ryder, and John get bonus marks for being so quick. Lambas. I like it. I just have to comment that it's in another time, this would have been a literal miracle to have an app work in a group setting after one day.
Don't speak too soon.
I mean, just what the fact that those green dots are lighting up alone is good, good enough for me. But yeah, anyways, going. All right. Anybody else need a couple more seconds? Oh, okay. The dot. See, the dot's not working properly. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. We're just gonna. You can hit resume, and it'll run out of time there. Oh, it's. Well, we'll give it a second there. Okay. Yep. And maybe we'll see if the other dots show up. But so now we're gonna advance to the voting phase. So we'll let that finish
So
out
you'll see
there.
like someone else also got your same verse and they also translated it and you get to
Now you get to vote.
best.
Which one is best? So we got 30 seconds. Which one's better?
See two options on it.
Nice, Mitch. I'm liking this one.
Should go scroll down a little bit.
Is the vote supposed to be like, this is more Gen Z versus less Gen Z?
You just I want more of this thing, whatever the goal might be.
All right, a new one just popped up.
A new one just pop up. Yep, so you can vote again. Ooh, I have to choose between translated with God and translated with Yahweh. I wish I could see the original. All right, one more. Oh, this is tough. Daniel, that's pretty good. But I think mine's better. I'm going to vote for mine.
That's for yours too.
See, look at that fire emoji. All right, any more? Oh, just last one. Well, I think I know which one's good here. All right.
We're gonna say and vote. Go from there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Yep. Okay, ending the voting. All right.
Some results.
So we have some results. So we could look through these and evaluate if we want. But instead, we're going to pass it to the AI bot.
Yeah. So now you're going to get, the AI was given all the things we just translated, and now it's going to start producing more verses based on what we gave it, and you can accept or decline it on your phone.
So the green one is the AI draft, and then you have to scroll down and say, yeah, I like that, or I don't like that.
And below the green, you see what the AI learned from for that specific example.
And then this process of accepting or rejecting is going to add more samples that it can look at.
So we've accepted 8 new verses, declined 2. Pretty good.
Don't ghost the Egyptian. Nice.
So this is just very similar, but like simpler and more fun. as to what happens in all of our apps.
In Codex in particular, yeah. The idea here is, again, like I said, the technology to make a new translation is already solved, and it happens fast. It's like you could imagine doing this really quickly, especially if you had a big group of people. And the definition of what makes it a good translation, well, that's actually, there's an objective side to that. There's also an audience-oriented side to it. Does it make sense? Can you understand what it's saying? And so, anyways, the beauty of this is because it's so much cheaper and so much faster, you can just do so much more. And if anybody has a problem with one of the translations and says this is no good or this isn't accurate, well, great, make another one. Make it yourself. You got no excuse now. Okay, anyways, that's good. So I think we're basically out of time. Let me see, what time is it?
It's,
3:28, we got 2 minutes? Okay.
should we say any more questions?
Yeah, let's have any more. Well, okay, wait. This is the thing I want you guys to take away. We won't get to the next part of the demo. I guess there was lots of questions, which is excellent. But what we were going to do next was have you guys brainstorm. Okay, what are some really huge problems? And then you could actually, through the app, have a chat with an AI that says, okay, here's some things to think about in terms of how could you create with AI, create some kind of idea or prototype that you could use to communicate to people, hey, here's a potential solution. Because there's really two big dimensions of taking a big problem that we have. It might be emergency shelter, human trafficking, it might be food, it might be education, it might be access, it might be some logistical problem, whatever it is. There's two really big things. One is you need to think outside of the box about, okay, there's actually new technology available to us. Maybe we need to think about the problem differently or attack it in a way that nobody has ever really thought about doing, or that everybody already knows is totally impossible and it would never work. Well, maybe just ask the question, okay, if I could wave my magic wand and fix one piece of it, what would I fix? And then start having a conversation with an AI bot. How can I start making, like, what are some ideas? What can I go through? How can I try to actually do something concrete here? And then the second thing is with those base camps, right? If you want to cross some threshold and make a really big difference, you're going to have a lot of people go, you can't do that. It's not going to work. Like, actually, there's one guy I meet with once a week, and anything I say, he goes, it'll never work. Yep, no, it's impossible. And he just says that out of reflex. No, he's joking. But it's funny because people actually say that seriously a lot. They just say, that's not going to work. You can't do it that way. Or this is a great one. We already tried that and it didn't work. So when somebody says that, what you should hear is not, oh no, it won't work. What you should hear is, hey, I'm not the only person crazy enough to think that's an idea to try. And so, yeah, anyways, I really want you guys to think about how to fix some of these really big problems because there's some really powerful technology available to us now. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Mostly. There was some point, no, just kidding. Yeah, but one key point here is AI is solving a lot bigger problems than just like how to translate. These are language models. Language is like what they do best, but they're also useful for a lot of other big things. Like on a personal level, like I had a heart transplant, and when I had that, they were basically saying you'll need another one in like 10 to 15 years. Now I'm 10 years out. I just had an appointment with my doctor, and he was like, well, because of like advances in AI and how that's improving things with gene therapy and things like that, I might never need one. That's like a lot harder of a problem to solve than, this. This is a really important problem, but like, yeah, just the tech is doing really, really, really amazing things in every single field. So be encouraged, and yeah, it's going to be a cool future.
Yeah, and Bible translation is going to get solved. That's the beautiful thing. We can, Lord willing, we can actually, we have the tools. We just need to do it, and it's actually going to get done. And then there's actually a lot of other problems. Some of them are sin problems, and we can't just solve them and switch them off. The Lord needs to do that. But other problems, actually, we can just fix them, and we should. And there's a lot of problems that we have fixed, and technology has been one of the main ways that's happened. And so now, all that's limiting us is passion, creativity, attention. So anyways, all right, thank you guys. This was really fun.
Look at that, 54.
54 accepted translations. That's really good, yep. All right.